Possibly one of the most important aspects to keep players engaged with your looter style game is not surprisingly the loot that drops within the game. Now, despite that, time and time again we see games where the loot and the associated loot chase is extremely lackluster. Now, with over 1600 hours in Last Epoch, I still log on excited about what loot I may get in my upcoming play session. So for today's video, we're going to break down exactly why that is the case. Loot then comes in 8 different rarities within Last Epoch. They are Basic, Magic, Rare, Weaver's Will, Experimental, Exalted, Unique and finally Legendary. Now, there's numerous reasons why the loot chase in the game is so good, but for the purpose of this video I'll mainly be focusing on the Legendary gear. I will however give a quick summary of the other rarities as well, just so you can see how they work in context. Now, starting off, we'll have a very quick look at the Basic, Magic and Rare gear. So this is the simplest gear that you will come across in Last Epoch, and you will very quickly outgrow this. We've got our basic gear. This means it has 0 affixes on it. We have your magic gear, which is 1 to 2 affixes, and then you have your rare gear, which is 3 to 4 affixes. Now, if I actually hold down the Alt key, you can see here that each of the affixes on the gear actually has a tier. That can go up to tier 5, and the higher the tier, the more powerful the affix will actually be. And you can get this from the item dropping. It could drop as a tier 5 item, or you can actually craft up to tier 5 as well. Now, in order to craft, you need to use something known as forging potential. You can see that just in the middle of the tooltip. I'm not going to get into that in too much detail, but the higher forging potential, the better. In regards to your items, now you have different types of items. So for example, we've got a ring here. This is a sapphire ring. You can see that the base stats in this are mana and increased mana regen. And then we have a different ring which actually has separate base stats. So in this instance, it gives you increased movement speed. So the base of the item that drops can be important, but you've got those affixes that will drop on the item and you can actually modify through crafting as well. Now, one thing that's really interesting with the gear is that the affixes aren't subject to diminishing returns. So if you want to stack a ton of movement speed, for example, or attack speed, or even dot application, then you're able to do that as well. Now, with this basic gear, the majority of the affixes on it are stat stacks, but there are some examples of more interesting affixes that are specific to your hero as well. But that's a very quick overview of your basic, magic and rare gear. Next up, we're going to have a look at your Weaver's Will gear. Weaver's Will items then are a relatively new item type that's been added to the game, so there's not a lot of base types that are available for this, but the developers have said that if the community does enjoy them, they will look to add more, and the reception to these has been really good. And now the way these work, you've got set items. So at the moment we've got the shield highlighted here. This is the cradle of the arrays. So you've got your base stats at the top, and then you've got your base fixes as well. Now these affixes will always be available on this particular item. Where you can make this item different, as you'll see in the middle of the tooltip, it currently says 15 Weaver's Will. So when this item drops, and it is just a random drop, it will have anywhere from between 1 to 28 random Weaver's Will. When you equip the item and you're defeating enemies, what will happen is 1 Weaver's Will actually be consumed, and that will add a random affix to your item. If we actually look at an item where I've used all the Weaver's Will that is available on it, so the random affixes it gave me in this instance were 14% of damage reflected and 62% physical resistance, and I've got a few other shields that I've leveled up as well, and you can see the affixes are very different on each of these particular items. So this is a really interesting item type. It's one where you can get some pretty godly items, and it's one where the developers are actually going to look to expand on it in future as well. But let's talk about experimental items now, and these are also a new addition to the game as well. Experimental items then can only be dropped by one enemy type. When you're running through a level, you'll come across a rune prison. Now, if you open that prison, there will be a mage that's been trapped there for thousands of years. If you're able to defeat that mage, and these fights can be really pretty tricky, but if you're able to defeat them, then they will drop an experimental item. Now, you can see that on this item, you've got a blue affix here. This affix is your experimental affix. Now, this will only drop on experimental gear. You cannot shatter this item to take the affix off off it and put it on another gear piece, but for this reason it allows the developers to really have a bit of fun with this particular effects type because it is so rare. Now if we look at a few examples on these gloves, if you were to equip these, then you have a percent of your current health lost per second, but in turn you gain a percent of missing health gained as ward per second. Generally this type of effects or ability along the lines of this is only available on your major acolyte, but you can use these gloves on any character, so it opens up different playstyles and different character classes as well. We've got the belt here. The belt's pretty awesome, so when you use this, the acolyte has a skill called volatile zombies, but any class can equip this, and when you actually have this equipped and you use a potion, then you'll summon 3 volatile zombies, so you could have your rogue summoning them for example. And then finally we've got the boots to look at here. So on the boots we've got increased minion damage, and your minions teleport around you after you actually use a traversal skill as well. So these are very new to the game, but I'm liking what they're doing with them so far. But what we're going to move on to now, and these next 3 item types are all really tied together, and these are what make the more interesting loot in the game. So it's your exalted, your uniques, and then finally your legendary gear. So this here is an exalted item. Now exalted items have the same affixes as your basic, rare and epic gear, but the difference with these is that the affixes can actually drop at tier 6 and 7. Now you cannot get tier 6 and 7 as a crafting upgrade. If we actually hold Alt once again here, we can see on this item it's saying the top effects it's tier 5, which is a max craftable, and then if we look at the exalted effects in this instance, it says it's tier 6, which is drop only. These items will start to drop when you get towards the end game. Now just as an example, so you can see how powerful these items can actually be as the tiers go up. So you've got fire damage here for example. So at tier 5 the fire damage range roll would be between 70 to 105%. If you get an exalted drop and it's got fire damage on it, then your tier 6 damage would be between 131 to 166. If you get tier 7, which is exceptionally rare, but when you get them it's really good fun, but for tier 7 you can see your fire damage range would actually be 168% to 210. So at tier 5 it's a minimum of 70%, at tier 7 it's a maximum of 210, so it's 3 times as powerful. Now with these items, as mentioned, the effects level can't be crafted at all. It's only available via drops, and it will be later on in the game you actually get these dropping. What makes these items even more amazing than they are currently is that you can actually combine these with uniques that have legendary potential to make a legendary item, which is a fusion of your exalted item and your unique as well. Now on the subject of uniques, let's have a look at them now. When it comes to uniques then and the implementation of the legendary system within Last Epoch, this is where the game really does shine for me, and this is where even though I've put 1600 hours into the game, I'm still excited about logging in and trying to find new awesome pieces of loot. So your unique items, you've got over 250 of them that are available in the game at the moment. They're powerful items that can support or enable a new build setup. Now I'll quickly show you one for each class here. These are more fun ones. So you get the Hive Mind here, which is a rogue helmet. This one, when you use a skill called Decoy in the rogue, it releases bees when it explodes as well, and if you hit the bees with your acid flask, they gain a toxic coating on them, meaning they'll actually do poison damage. So that's really fun. We've then got the mage here, the Harbinger of Stars. This particular one increases your meteor fall speed. Meteor is a skill you have that's got its full skill tree, so it's got like 20 modifiers plus. With this as well, you get a chance to cast Meteor on crit if you're above 0 mana, so you don't even have to have the skill on your bar. You can be running around with a build that does a lot of crit and you'll be calling down meteors at the same time. We have the Acolyte up next here. This is Bone Harvester. The third effect's down on this one. There's a chance to summon a Skeleton Harvester for 15 seconds when you defeat an enemy. We've looked at this in the previous video. This is pretty awesome. Herald of the Scurry. This is your Primalist helmet. So with this one here, the Primalist can summon wolves, but your wolves will be converted into squirrels instead, and it doubles the number of companions you have. So normally you can have up to 5 wolves. This allows you to have up to 10 squirrels just running around the screen wrecking everything. So this is amazing. And then we've got the Hand of Judgment, which is a really fun unique for your Sentinel class. So this particular one, you can see at the top it says you do additional melee damage per attunement stat for this skill while you're unarmed. So with this particular setup, you don't use a weapon at all. You just go around with your bare fists, just absolutely destroying everything. Now, that's some of the fun uniques that are available in the game. You'll notice with the uniques, it says they have legendary potential. This can go from between 1 to 4 legendary potential. Now, using a dungeon that's available in the game, you can actually combine your uniques and your exalted items as well to make something known as legendary items. So what this means is your low level uniques, as long as they've got high legendary potential, you can use them at end game, and generally it provides essentially endless gear hunt between finding good exalted items and uniques with legendary potential as well. So that's why the gear hunt never gets boring in the game. Now let's actually have a look at some legendary items just so it makes a bit more sense how these actually work. So this here is where things can get pretty crazy and where it really can be fun when you have the right combination of items that drop. Now, just to refresh your memory on this, we're going to bring up an exalted item here because your legendary is a combination of a unique and an exalted being put together. So you've got your exalted item, you've got your 4 different affixes on it. You can see the purple one is the exalted one. Now when you actually combine an item together, it has to be the same item type, so you would have to find a scepter that's got legendary potential on it. Once again, it goes between 1 to 4. 4 is exceptionally rare. I've only actually seen that once in all the time that I've played since the multiplayer update went live, so that's probably around about 400 hours or so. Exceptionally rare, but reason being that it is exceptionally powerful if you do actually get it. But you'll very often find you'll get an item or a unique item with 1 legendary potential. Now the way it actually works is when you combine these items, it will actually take 1 random affix from your exalted item, so it won't necessarily take the assaulted affix. If we look at this item we've got here, there would be an even 25% chance of each of these affixes being put onto the unique item that has 1 legendary potential. So the more legendary potential you've got in the item, the more affixes it will randomly be moved over. So of course, if you've got 4 legendary potential, then all 4 affixes on your item will actually be moved over. But for this one here, it could be any one of these 4 that's moved over. So you may get a god tier item, or you may get an affix that isn't really useful for your unique at all, unfortunately. I'll show you some uniques that I've actually upgraded to legendaries. So this one here, and what's great about the legendary system is that when you slam an exalted item onto a unique with legendary potential, it doesn't change the level requirement of it. This particular gear piece that's dropped, there is no level requirement on it, so you can use this from level 1. Now it normally does 10 melee damage, however I was lucky enough to get it with 1 legendary potential, and again I was lucky enough when I actually combined it to get an affix to go on it that gives me a whopping additional 37 melee fire damage, and I can use this from level 1. So if I'm running a new character in the game and I put this on them, I'll absolutely smash my way through the lower levels. So the legendaries are amazing for that reason. You also have other legendaries that will have higher legendary potential on them, which means you can move over more affixes. You can see in this instance I was able to move over 2 affixes to this particular item. I got one of the affixes I was wanting, which was the increased spell damage and reduced mana cost. Chance to chill I didn't really want there. I would have preferred to get cold damage, but still this makes this item really pretty amazing, and it makes it one that I will be using on my Rune Master character that I'm actually running at the moment. So with that should give you a real good overview of how loot actually works in Last Epoch, and once again I think the loot system is absolutely amazing. The thumbnail title that I've used in this video, I'm not using that as hyperbole or anything like that. The loot is absolutely incredible, and it's why after all this time of playing the game I'm still excited to actually log in and see what exalted or unique items I can actually get and what combination I can get from combining them together there. Now let me know what you think about all this, about the loot in Last Epoch, in the comments below, and thanks for tuning in. Stay safe, and I'll see you all again soon.